All right, welcome back to another episode of Travel Ball Talk. I'm your host, Rich Prado, owner of Play in School. Today we're heading up to talk to Steve Lomasney from Show New England up in the Massachusetts-New Hampshire border. So we'll talk about that in a second. But Steve, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Rich. Thanks for having me on.
Well, got to give a plug to our mutual friend Pat Mason. He was the one who suggested I get you on. And I know you guys are I don't know how you guys would describe it, a three-step partner of some sorts, which Pat is with three-step now. So maybe that's something we can talk about in a little bit. But the first thing is...
No, Pat's a great guy.
Oh, he's a stud.
And it's a great partnership. Absolutely.
He's a stud. And for you guys don't recognize that name, Pat was the former head coach at Virginia Tech. And now he's back home in the Boston area doing some big things with an organization called Three Step, which, you know, some of you guys may not know about, some of you may, but they're really growing at a rapid pace, but they stay sort of behind the scenes. So kind of interesting company in the sports world. But Steve, let me stop rambling and let's let you introduce yourself to our audience, and you know, after you kind of talk about yourself, introduce Show New England, kind of how that got started, and where we're at today.
Yeah, sure thing. Well, like I said, I appreciate you having me on. I'm a baseball enthusiast, passionate about the sport. Grew up in Peabody, Massachusetts, playing town ball, t-ball, little league, Babe Ruth, Legion ball, just like everybody else. I might be considered a little bit older in this game at 44 years old, and travel ball really wasn't around that affluent when I was a kid. And my first experience with travel ball was actually a team called the New England Mariners. I was 13 years old, and AAU, there was no AAU in New England at the time, and this group of guys got together and said, hey, let's put together an AAU team. Nobody really knew what that meant when it referred to baseball. Everyone kind of thought of that as basketball back then. They had a tryout. There was close to 500 kids showed up for the tryout, made the team, and then that was kind of the evolution of travel ball in New England at the time, with the New England Mariners being the first and only team when I was 13 and 14 years old. And then there were, you know, other programs popped up after that, but that was our first experience as a travel ball. It was my first experience as a travel ball guy. So exposed me nationally, got out there around the country to see the talent that was out there, and playing at that level really helped me as a ball player going into high school baseball. Ultimately ended up getting drafted out of high school in the 5th round by the Boston Red Sox. Had a 12-year career, made it to the big leagues for a minute with the Boston Red Sox. Had an injury late in my career that kind of derailed it a little bit. And from there, it started off as Steve Lomasney Baseball Academy and evolved into where we are today with the Show Baseball and Softball Academy and Show New England as our apparent travel ball club. So it's been a long process getting here, but in the same respect, it's been great, and love being around and being able to teach kids and teach them the game that I learned at a very high level and experience the experiences that I got as a ball player.
Do you, I'm looking here, you would have been log jammed behind a guy named Steve Veritek.
Jason Veritek.
Oh, excuse me. I'm looking at two websites at the same time, and your face and his face next to it. Jason Veritek. Got the gig that you would have loved to have had, and he had.
He came over from Seattle, and I spent I believe in 7 big league camps with Jason. So great guy. He was a great mentor, a student of the game. That guy has earned everything he's ever accomplished in baseball, and what a great baseball mind. And just to experience that, I mean, that guy was an analytics guy before analytics was a thing. I mean, he's just a student of the game and pitching staffs and hitters. He was awesome to be around. So I was fortunate enough to be around him.
And a long career at the big league level, like 15 plus years. Unbelievable.
He was great.
To put it together, especially at that position. Now I want to go backwards a little bit. You mentioned AAU. We don't have a lot of guys on here who talk about AAU. I had the same experience as you. Now I'm a couple years behind you. I was a grad class from high school of 1997. I think you were 1995.
Correct.
But same exact thing where we had all of a sudden, everybody's familiar with AAU basketball back then. And then there was this all, out of nowhere was this AAU baseball. We, just like you, one team in the state. Yep. So you started at the 13. I'm kind of curious. Do you remember where the national? I'm assuming you went to a national tournament that year, and it probably had 30 teams in it, something like that.
Yep.
Where was it?
Yeah, we were Blaine, Minnesota. We were out in Blaine, Minnesota for the national tournament. That was our first year, 13U.
Was that pretty fun?
It was unbelievable. It was an unbelievable experience to see the level of talent that was there. And I don't remember the number of the teams, but it was, you're right on. It wasn't a lot. And back then you had to win your way there. We kind of by default were the only team in the New England region.
That's right.
So we by default got to go. So our experience with playing prior to getting there, we didn't have tournaments. So we started off playing Babe Ruth teams, and it was ugly. We were very, very good, and ultimately the only other teams playing during the summer that were competitive for us. And I know this might sound crazy, but we started playing Legion teams, American Legion teams, scrimmages against American.
13 years old, playing against a bunch of high school kids.
That's what that's how we got ready, and they beat us. But we were competitive. It was close. Like there were a lot of really good games. But that was the only really level that got us ready. And we go down there as a first year team, and we ended up that first year finishing 5th in the country in those nationals. The next year we came back a year older, playing the American Legion teams. We're beating them. We go down to Kissimmee, Florida, and we end up winning the national title. That's in our second year as the New England Mariners.
Yeah, Gosh, your experience mirrored mine almost to a T. Our first, I think we did it at 12, 13, and 14. And the irony is we called it quits at 14, after 14, because we were like, Coach, the recruiting all takes place at American Legion, so we need to go do that.
Yeah. So true. Yeah, so true.
The hilarious part is we would have whipped at 14. We could have beat every American Legion team in town. But yeah, just like you, first year out, only team in the state, no one to play. Our coaches didn't have the good idea to go play Babe Ruth and American Legion team, so we had 1 week of practice, and then we went to the national. This would have been at 12U, and won a bronze. So we came in third in the country, and this was a small tournament. It was like 30, 35 teams. The next year, and that was in Norman, Oklahoma. The hot baseball spot, right?
Yeah.
Norman, Oklahoma.
Oh yeah.
Then
we went to Arkansas too. That was, oh my God, the temperature in Arkansas was unbelievable.
Yeah,
but I hear you. Yeah.
We then went at 13. The year we were 13, the championship moved to Cocoa Beach. So you guys were kissing me. I guess I don't know if that's the same neck of the woods of Florida. And, that year we had to win like a weekend doubleheader against the other team from Virginia.
Yes. So our 15U year, we were in Cocoa Beach. So that's maybe that was the same year. But yeah, it all started to get down towards Florida for the tournaments. Yeah.
And then finally we went back to the baseball hotbed of Ankeny, Iowa, at the 14U level, and that was it. That's at that point in time we shut it down. The funny part is that when we were 14 transitioning to American Legion for that next summer, around here is when we began to see the start of what we know as travel baseball. My coach sort of started dabbling in it, and there's a guy out of Virginia Beach named Lee Banks, and he started dabbling in it, and he it's funny. Lee's a stud. He runs Tidewater Orioles, which they changed their name to the Phillies now because he's scouting with the Phillies. But the Tidewater Orioles, he always had every dude from Virginia Beach. All those big leaguers that from Virginia Beach.
Oh yeah,
they all played for him. So I mean, could Dyer, David Wright, the Uptons, they all came through his program. And
Yep.
and it was all right at that same time, that mid to late 90s is when this whole thing got turned on its head.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The entire thing.
No
Anyway,
doubt.
you triggered some memories, and so let's get off my memory lane and get back to Show New England. So it's at some point in time, your pro career comes to an end. Do you jump right into running Steve Lomasney baseball at that time, or was there something kind of in between?
No, I started it while I was playing. I actually built out a facility in the Northeast in Peabody. Small facility, 2 cages, 1 full cage, 1 short cage, and I did all my lessons. All I did was lessons. It was Steve Lomasney Baseball Academy. That's all I did. The entire off season, I would train and get ready for going back to pro ball, but in the same time, I was doing a ton of lessons and kind of learned how to work with kids. And with the stuff that I was doing at the professional level, working with big league hitting coaches, AAA hitting coaches, and all these guys, and all the stuff that I had to learn as a hitter to be an average at best hitter, I would say, in pro ball. I was able to bring back and start working with hitters. I was a catcher. I had a real knack for being a good defensive catcher, so that was really good. Working with pitchers, I wasn't a great mechanics guy, but I was teaching guys how to pitch,
Right.
and I think that's also been a lost art over the last few years, but that's a story for another day. But I was really just working with kids inside Steve Lomasney Baseball Academy while still chasing my dream. When I stopped playing in 2006, stepped away from pro ball, had some opportunities to do some coaching at rookie ball level. And I said to my wife, I said, I think I want to move back up north. I had a home down in Florida that I bought, and that was my spring training home. I said I want to sell, and let's move back up to the Northeast, the Boston area, and I'd like to try to do this facility thing and maybe start a program. And that's kind of how it all evolved. Came back here in 2008. Worked with another program for a couple of years. Got my feet on the turf, maybe 80 hours a week working with kids. And it was a grind. It was a grind. And anybody that's been in the facility or coaches or does travel ball, and when you're first starting, that's where you got to be. Your feet have to be on the turf. So it evolved into something, but there was something I thought that was missing, and there were so many young teams, and everybody focused on, the 9U, 10U, 11U, 12U, 13U, 14U. To me, in my opinion, there was no means to an end. Like, nobody was really focusing on the recruiting side of it and getting these kids into college, and nobody had the information, and nobody understood the NCAA recruiting calendar. Nobody understood, it just wasn't happening yet. And this is now 2009, 2010, and the saying back then with the guys that were running the programs were, well, there's not a lot of money in the older kids because they're only in for a couple of years and then they're out. And I said, well, you're going to keep them longer if you have that for them. So when I finally decided to do the show, I started it with the older teams. My first year was 16, 17s was my first year, not with the 9s and 10s and throwing it up. And then I kind of evolved backwards to the younger teams, which now we go from 9 all the way to 18. But my goal back in 2009, 2010, when I started this, was I need to create a network with college coaches, because we had some really, really good players. I had really good players, guys that I felt were Division I college players. And ultimately, out of my first 2 years, we had 11 Division I guys come out of our program. So that kind of was the footprint for what we've evolved into over the years. And I had to learn along the way, talk to a lot of college coaches, ask a lot of dumb questions, and kind of get it all figured out. But I found this nucleus of college coaches that I now have had since that time, that to lean on heavily for questions and say, hey, listen, I want to do this. Is this the right thing to do? And they would say, yeah, man, that's the right approach. College coaches would appreciate that. Or, no, don't do that. You're going to burn that bridge, and da-da-da-da. And from there, I kind of evolved into who we are today.
Well, I tell you, you said a word that I think is one of the most important words in travel baseball, and when you said network. And, I say it all the time, your Rolodex is gold. I know
Absolutely.
young listeners don't know what a Rolodex is, but that's okay. Your network is absolute paramount. And you said you ask a lot of dumb questions. I love the way you phrased that. Like, what do you? I mean, not to put you on the spot with a dumb question here, but what were some of the things that in those first couple years when you put that first older team together, you'd pick up the phone and call your buddy down the street at such and such a college. What were some of the things you were asking back then that might seem totally obvious to you today?
Yeah, a lot of it had to do with the recruiting process itself, and back then, really nobody was ahead of the junior class. Like, it was really the recruiting of the junior class at that time. So I had never really thought of things as year of graduation. It was always age group back then, right? You always thought, oh, you got a 15U, you got a 16U, you got and if kid was a 15U but happened to be a junior, or a 16U and happened to be a junior, they're recruiting that class. So a lot of the mistakes I made early as a program director is I would put kids on teams by ages when, that kid should have been getting recruited, even though he was a year behind or his birthday fell in a different area than it should have been in school. So that was a learning curve for me, because, now everything is done by year of graduation in our program. So once you get into high school, you play on, your underclass team, you play on your junior team. So right now our 2023s are our juniors, our 2024s are our sophomores, and we kind of do it that way. But just really not the rules and regs that these college coaches have to go through, and talking to players and compliance and all that stuff that goes along with it that, a lot of people have no idea about. I had no idea about it at the time. So yeah, a lot of the answers, I'd love to do that, but I can't because of this rule. I'd love to do that because of this rule. Or I got to check with compliance to make sure I can do that. And, those are really the things I had to get up to date on with that process. So now looking back on it, it's all second nature to us now. I can answer any question when it comes to the recruiting process. But back then, I didn't have all those answers.
One thing, while we're on this topic, if a mom and dad is listening, and we bring up all these rules and regulations, the compliance stuff related to the recruiting, I try to remind people all of those rules and the tests. These coaches have to take tests. All of those are for the coaches, not for the players. And so there's no rule that a player is going to break. You can't break an NCAA rule because they don't apply to you. So you don't. I try to remind people, you don't get caught up too much in that stuff, because there's nothing you can do to get yourself in trouble. When I mean nothing you can do, I'm talking about like if you go up and shake a hand of a coach at the wrong time, and it's a time when they can't say hello to you. That's okay. It's not gonna. There's nothing. There's no negative repercussion on you if you send an email during the wrong time, the quote unquote wrong time. It's okay. You're not. There's nothing you can do to get in trouble. If you call at the wrong time, it's okay. These guys will always tell you, "Hey, we can't talk to you right now." If you're in an event and they can't talk to you, they'll tell you that. It's no big deal, just based on timing or your age or whatever the specific rule of that time. So players, parents, don't literally. I mean, I don't know how it is today, but those tests used to be open book because they were just bananas, right? So anyway, so don't get too caught up in that stuff. That's no
doubt.
So that's pretty cool. So when you started the show originally, before we hit record, you were telling me you guys were on the Massachusetts side, and and this might be fast forwarding the story a little bit, but you were about to go into a story before we hit record. So tell us where you were, where you are now, and sort of how you got back and forth between those two.
Yeah, absolutely. My original facility, the show Baseball and Softball Academy, was in Lawrence, Mass, which is in the Merrimack Valley area of Massachusetts. My clientele at the time, I had a lot of Southern New Hampshire guys and a lot of North Shore of Massachusetts guys, which is, Peabody, Danvers, Gloucester, Belt, more towards Boston, just north of Boston. So I tried to find a midway point for a facility where it was like 20 minutes coming north, 20 minutes coming south, and everybody was happy. I was trying to be as geographically unbiased as possible. So our original facility, kind of the footprint to what is created show that everybody knows of now, was in Lawrence, Mass. All the way up until last year, right up the highway into Salem, New Hampshire, which is not too far from Lawrence. Another facility kind of came available in a partnership with the group that was in there. And I kind of took over the baseball program and went into that facility. So I went from 10,000 square feet of turf space and cages up to a new facility, which is now being completely renovated in Salem, New Hampshire, to 22,000 square feet. So it's a tremendous training facility for baseball and softball. It's a great space. We got 12 full-size cages in there now. The turf space is tremendous when it's opened up. All the curtains pull open, so you can long toss in there and throw the bases and so on and so forth. And now from there, I am currently starting work September 23rd on a second facility on the North Shore of Massachusetts in Peabody. That will be probably a mirror image of what the original facility was in Lawrence. A great training space. We're going to be about 10,000 square feet, high cages, 6 full-size tunnels, short cages, pitching machines, all the gadgets that you need for development. So we'll have our North Shore base of Massachusetts, and then that 93-114 belt all the way up into Salem, New Hampshire. We've got our second facility, so our North and our New Hampshire facility and our Mass facility.
That's awesome. That's congratulations, man. That's
Thank
pretty
you.
good. I think it seems to come up every single week now when I talk to coaches, and there's this idea of scaling and growing, and some of these teams have grown so fast that it's a struggle. But you don't sound. Yeah. It doesn't sound like you're scaling at too fast a pace. You went from 10,000 square feet for several years to then you found sounds like a good situation where you moved up, you doubled, but that business sounds like it already had some people in the door already.
It did, yeah.
So now you're going to be able to, with the second facility, you're going to be able to service another pretty big geographic area down. I forget what you guys call it, North Shore.
North Shore, Massachusetts.
That's awesome. Yep. Will you? And I don't know if you're just about to start construction on that. Will it be one set of teams for Show New England, or are you going to have a set of teams down there and a set of teams up in New Hampshire? Will it be separate or combined, do you think?
When we get to our top teams, our elite teams, the teams are who they are, right? And we'll kind of fluctuate back and forth. But if we've got 3 kids up in the New Hampshire area that are really, really good top team players, we've got 4 kids in the Merrimack Valley and 4 kids in the North Shore, they're going to create one elite team. Then that's you're going to go on the team we place you.
Yeah, you combine.
You combine. Yeah. So below that, we're going to be geographically biased. And when we start our training, especially November 1st is when we really start our training for our fall and winter workouts and stuff like that. We're going to let people choose the facility because we do it like a college program where we do individuals. So if there are catchers on the North Shore, you're doing your individual catching work, defensive work on a Monday night, come to the Peabody space on the North Shore. Catchers up in the Merrimack Valley, Southern New Hampshire area, go on a Tuesday night. I'm going to be up in there doing the catching stuff. You guys come to the Salem facility, and they're all getting their work done. They're all getting their defensive work. Offensive work, same way. We can go pick and choose. It's going to be the same instructors, same coaches. And then as we get closer to the season for the high school guys, I've always had the mentality that, on March 17th, they're getting ready to play their high school baseball season. They're going to go for tryouts and stuff like that. So my first and third and bunt defenses and cutoffs and relays that we cover all the winter are all going to be lost because you're going to go, theoretically play for your high school coach for 2 months before you can step back on the field with me in June. So really, I just need to get him good fundamentally. I need to get him as proficient with the barrel of the bat as possible. So when they step on the field, they're barreling balls. Pitchers are able to compete in the strike zone with multiple pitches. So all that stuff for me from a development standpoint is really team second and individual player first. And then once we get our teams back together, obviously from a practice perspective, it's a cram session before June. The younger teams, it's a little bit different. You got to do your team stuff because as soon as the weather breaks up in the Northeast, you're getting on the field, as fast as possible and then playing games as fast as possible. So in January, we really get our teams together away from the individual work, teams together, and going over that team specific stuff that everybody needs to do to have some sort of awareness of their teammates, arm strength, bunt defenses, first and third defenses, signs, all that stuff that goes along with the team, the team perspective. So, we've been good over the years doing this stuff, and it's worked out well for us.
Awesome. So when I got on the phone with Pat Mason and he was telling me that that I need to get you on the show, he was bragging on you and bragging on the show a little bit about how good a job you guys do in placing your players. And before we hit record, you and I were talking about how that phenom is really easy to place, but the reality is that you're spending the majority of your time with the kid that's not the phenom. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
What would you say is some of y'all's magic sauce, inside of the show that's helped you hopefully be pretty successful placing guys, not only placing guys, but placing guys at the right place?
Right. Yeah. It's a formula that's kind of, it's never perfect, but if you have the right focus on what you're doing in the recruiting process, and when I say you, the family and the player, and a lot of that guidance has to come, from the guys that've done it before. And, we say this all the time. The most important part of this is finding the right fit. And we want all of our players, when they finally decide and make a decision to commit to go play college baseball, that's a 4-year commitment. And to be able to be educated on the process, understanding of, first and foremost, the parent's financial, background, the academic background of the student athlete, and the level of play for that player. When you figure that out and you can kind of bullseye schools and say, okay, these are the right fits for you. And ultimately, when the parents understand that and the kids understand that, there's a tremendous appreciation from the parents because it makes the process a little bit easier. Then guys are going to schools and we're committing guys that are there for 4 years, and college coaches love the relationship and they say, okay, they're sending us the right guys. And we've had a lot of success doing that over the years. Between myself, I have another gentleman by the name of Pete Delaney that has been doing it with me for 8 years. He's kind of our head of recruiting and academics. And then last year I hired Joe Kinney, who was at Lafayette for 21 years as the head coach. He's been a tremendous asset. From being a guy that was on the other side of the desk doing the recruiting and listening to some of the obstacles that he goes through as a recruiter and hearing his side of it, we put together a pretty good package to be able to guide parents in the right direction.
I was sitting here looking at the staff directory, and next to your photo is Joe Kinney, and I didn't click on his bio, and I'm sitting here looking at him going, I know that name.
Yeah.
What an absolute, just amazing resource to have on your staff. Yes. Holy cow.
Yeah.
For anybody who's not, totally familiar.
From a travel ball perspective, that's a first round pick that we just got.
100%.
Staff guy. Yeah.
100%. For those of you guys who don't necessarily know, Lafayette's a high academic school, Northeast school. It's up in Pennsylvania. Just a big time academic program. Incredible resource to have. I mean, not that many travel ball teams can say they've got a guy that was, what was he, a 20-year head coach?
21 years. Yeah, 21 years. Yeah, 21
incredible.
Year
Incredible.
Yep.
And that's all. It's funny. I'm looking at his bio now, and he says one of the things he listed he had some freshman All-Americans under his coaching, and one of them's Corey Sparrow. I know Corey well.
Yeah.
I know his dad.
Okay.
He's out of the Northern Virginia area, and Corey now works with Head First. Shockingly enough,
right?
No
kidding.
Yeah. Great kid. This is a 2014 kid. A recent grad or semi-recent grad. Incredible. Way to go scoring him, man. Good going.
Yeah. Huge asset. Yep.
Yeah, that's That is. I can't even. You left me kind of speechless because I've been sitting here looking at the staff directory the whole time because it had your bio on it, and he's sitting there right next to you. Very good. Well, listen, I want to ask a couple of questions here. These are the ones I've been, sort of my standards lately. Okay. The first one, so I'm kind of curious to get your take on this one. The first one's usually like a softball, just to get you warmed up, although we're pretty warmed up here 30 minutes in. So the question used to be what book should every coach read, but I had to adjust it because even myself, I've got a 5-year-old. There's not a lot of book reading going on in my house.
Right.
Not personal book reading. I read every day to my little guy, but I don't get to read many books for my own pleasure. So I adjusted the question to include what books, movies, websites, or any other resources do you think is just an absolute must that that every coach should either read or digest in whichever way.
Yeah, no, I'm an old school guy. I'm a reader myself, but there's a little known book out there right now that I hope takes off. It's called Take or Attack, and it's how to hit while being measured. It was written by a guy by the name of Aaron Capista. Aaron was a second-round draft pick in '97 for the Boston Red Sox. Highly touted switch hitting shortstop out of Chicago. And over the last, I would say, 10 years, he's really kind of developed into one of the better hitting coaches, unknown better hitting coaches. And I'm not going to go through his resume, but he's got a lot of big leaguers that he works with. But the book itself is, in my opinion, a simplified breakdown of what every dad or young coach should be working with their young hitters and the philosophies and the focuses and, obviously with the way the game is today and the analytics of things and the launch angles and the exit velos and stuff like that, there is some value into that stuff. But for young hitters, this is a must read. It is an absolute must read. He talks about everything to pitch selection, mindset, controlling the barrel, like all the stuff that as young hitters and probably your generation, my generation of hitters were focused on, and that was being good hitters. And some of the training stuff he talks about in there, and the focus on training, and focus on hitting strikes in front toss and taking balls and in your practice and so on and so forth. It's just a great read. It's only, honestly, it might be like 50 pages, and it's a great read, and it's a baseball guy talking baseball. And I think everybody should check it out. It's called Take or Attack.
Take or Attack. I'm looking at it on Amazon. You can get it for $2.99 on Kindle or $9.99 in paperback. It's called Take or Attack: How to Hit While Being Measured by Aaron Capista. And I'll tell you what, you just made me really happy that I asked this question. I just followed him over on Twitter, and that's at Cappy's Cage. At Cappy's Cage. This looks like a pretty interesting book. Man, I'm so glad I asked you that. So you make sure we give Aaron Capista a shout out. That he just got a big mention on the #1 podcast featuring travel ball owners, founders, and GMs. This is huge, awesome. huge podcast. Dozens of listeners. So I'm sure the sales of his book are about to just go through the roof. That's awesome. I'd never heard of this guy, and I'd never heard of his book, but I'm looking at the description. It sounds awesome, and you gave it quite the plug. I'm also seeing that he may or may not have been in the Red Sox organization as well. Did you meet him back in the day?
Yeah, he and I played together. We played a few years together. He was a little bit younger than I was, but he caught up relatively fast. And when I got hurt, I came back at a lower level to rehab and spent some time with him as a young player. And the way you evolve as a former player into who we are today and the path we all take is a little bit different. But he has really really evolved as a hitting coach, and he studies it, and he wrote this book, and he sent it to me. I didn't even know he was writing it, and he sent it to me, and I said, Cappy, there are so many people that need to read this. So many people. I sent it to all of our hitters. We and it's really from a training perspective and understanding what it is to just be a good hitter. I think it nails a lot of boxes. It checks off a lot of boxes. So I love it, and I think that you asked the question, and that's the answer.
Yeah. So I think I got a decent segue here, because that sort of takes into account all the measurements, right? And the measurements are coming from all of the gizmos and gadgets and toys that we all love now. So what tech are you using inside your facilities?
Yeah, we've got the Rapsodos. We do the hit track stuff, and we have all the the exit velo monitors and launch angle stuff, and it's keeping up, in my opinion, keeping up with the Joneses, but with the same understanding that there's a lot of value to it, especially to compare and contrast. I think that's important. When you're talking about measurables, and you could say, okay, I can watch a baseball player and I can project out his athleticism and the way he plays the game, and you coach him long enough, his IQ, and the stuff that's important to college coaches first and foremost is character and the type of people that they are and the type of teammates they are. Would you want to coach them for 4 years? So to me, that stuff is the real kind of gravy to every kid. Yeah. But college coaches need this stuff. They need the information. They got to compare and contrast to their other recruits, the guys they have in. It does help with projection. I don't think it's a teaching tool necessarily. The Rapsodo I am a big fan of, especially when we're teaching kids how to carve pitches per their release point, and stuff that works in movement and stuff like that, which is real value. The pitchers, being able to understand their movement and, what this finger here does and what that finger there does. And you're able to see it and watch the rotation and check out the RPMs and you see all that stuff. Rapsodo is tremendous in regards to that. So we've got them all, and we use them all.
The biggest gripe I have right now is when a kid either takes a swing or delivers a pitch, and before they're even finished with that motion, they're already looking for a screen somewhere. That's my and again, that's maybe that's a small nitpick, but
Another tool we use is blast motion, and I think blast is great. It helps players, especially when they start to really understand the system, how to really make self corrections. But that's also, kind of the kids put it on their phone. They drop their phone right next to the plate. They take a swing and they're looking down at their measurables right away to see. And I agree with you 100%. You're like, all right, let's calculate 10 swings. Let's step out of the cage, and then we'll go through it, and then we'll analyze it, and then we'll get back in and work on some stuff. But yeah, it does get kind of tiresome to watch every swing looking for something.
Yeah, the head snaps around looking for that screen, right? So
absolutely.
It really can be a cool thing when you hop in a cage. Kid hits one ball, okay, you hit the next ball, and you look at the numbers and you say you can obviously see which one's better. Let's keep doing more of that. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
You tweak something, numbers go down. You go, let's go back the other direction a little bit. And before all these toys were in everybody's facility, it was you were going off feeling instead of actual data, which is
right. And I totally agree with you. The feel of your swing is your swing, and I know there's this debate about real versus feel and stuff like that, but if you can't feel it, then you can't make the corrections and you can't make the adjustments you need. And these are all tools to help us see things, but ultimately the hitter's got to feel it. The pitcher's got to feel it. It's not a science when it comes to being really good at barreling balls. I truly believe that guys go through and have careers of just being really good at taking the sweet spot of the barrel and putting it on the sweet spot of the ball more consistently than everybody else.
That's right.
And it's not necessarily because they got great swings.
That's
it's
right.
just they got a great feel of what they're doing, and they got great timing.
Yeah. Hey, so you're a pretty good guy to ask about this because you've went through this a year ago. You're getting ready to go through it again. But what's one piece of advice you'd give somebody that's just about to start a travel ball team, or in this specific case, opening up a facility? What's that go-to advice you're going to give somebody?
If you're a baseball guy and an instructor, and you're a coach, and you're opening that facility, it's feet on the turf. It really is for me. Like you've got to be out there. You've got to be engaged. Try to get to know every single one of your players. Work with all of them. When it comes to a team perspective, you got multiple teams. Get to the practices, and be there all the time. And it's hard. It can get hard, but that exudes throughout a program, in my opinion. And if you're opening a facility and it's a rental facility, and so that's a little bit different. But if you're a travel ball guy and you're building a travel ball program through a facility, get your feet on the turf as much as you can. Get out there and be that visual leader and vocal leader that you need to be. And parents and kids are driven to that. Be the Pied Piper of your program. That's my advice.
Here's a question. I think it's the first time I've ever asked it. At what point, at what size of business do you think it might be appropriate to hand over the business side to a business guy? Does that question even make sense? My assumption is you're probably doing all the baseball stuff, in the afternoons and evenings, just like most facilities, and then you're doing all the business stuff during the day, which means you're working all day and all night.
Right.
So, in your opinion, is there an appropriate time to hand that responsibility of the business, the quote unquote business stuff, to a business guy?
Yeah, it's actually one of the hardest things to do, and I have done it, and it was the best decision I ever made, and that goes along with your introduction earlier with Pat and Three Step. Three Step is my business partner, and they have helped me grow as a business, and handling all the stuff that I had done for the previous 9 years as a program director and CPA. Not really a CPA, but handling the books and doing all the payrolls and handling all the invoices and stuff like that. And it gets to a point where it ends up being a 24-hour-a-day job, and a little of that takes away from what you're really good at. And for me, it was being on the turf, being a coach, being able to go to all the games, being able to go to Georgia for 2 weeks, Fort Myers for 2 weeks with the teams, and Diamond Nation for 2 weeks, and go to all these places and travel with the teams, and know that the business is being run and all the bills are being paid and everything is being done properly. It takes a while to get to that. And anybody that runs a program that has done it the way I've done it, there's a control factor that's hard to release.
Mm-hmm.
But when you do it, you end up benefiting the program and yourself in time and focus on things that are really the driving force of the program, and that is development, player development. So it happens. It should happen. If you're a growing business, you're going to get to a point where you're going to need help. I guarantee it.
I've recommended to a few guys that run facilities. I know that they're such good instructors. They're so, like, they shouldn't ever give that up. But it's on the flip side is they're spending so much time doing the business stuff, and I'm going, why don't you just hire that part out? Hire, whatever you want to call it, a GM or a CEO. Some of these, I would really say some of these people need to hire a CEO, and then that person becomes essentially director of baseball or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Yep. But it sounds like and this was honestly, it was an accidental question because we had referenced Three Step earlier at the very beginning of the show, and I wanted to talk about them, and it was an accidental question. They are what I was asking about, which is a perfect answer. And again, I said they seem to stay behind the scenes. If you end up going to Three Step Sports, if you Google them, what you'll see is they, they're involved or own a lot of logos that you'll recognize, but their name 3-Step isn't necessarily on the forefront. It's a bunch of brands, it's a bunch of teams, it's a bunch of logos that we all recognize from a bunch of different sports. So I guess, hey, if you're running the facility and you're looking for a little help, or if you're running a team, a big organization, and you're looking for a little bit of help, you might want to reach out to Pat Mason. I'm happy to put you in touch if you don't know him. And I'm sure he'll have a conversation with you. Cool plug. I'm glad we made a commercial for Pat.
Yeah.
He can thank me later.
Yeah.
All right. What this is where I hand over the magic wand and let you hopefully make a positive impact. Is there one change or a couple changes that you think would have the biggest positive impact in the travel baseball world?
Oof. That is a great question, and I think there's so much room for improvement for all of us in this thing. I would say, depending on what your focus is. So for me, my focus is the players, right? And I know a lot of people say that, but in what we do collectively, there's a lot of egos. And the egos kind of what put us in a bad spot, because we're all fighting for the same types of players. We want to promote our program as the best. We want to do all those things from a brand perspective, and the brand is very, very important for every individual. So important is the brand. But if collectively we could all just step back a little bit and say, as program directors, whatever it is, and say, okay, listen, let's put our egos aside and let's figure out how to make this work for everybody. And I think that if everybody has the focus and the mindset to say, okay, listen, it's about the kids. It's not about winning national tournaments. It's not about winning, which all that stuff is great. And teams do that because they got the best players, and, they're able to, get the talent and so on and so forth. But I think if everybody could just put their egos aside in this for a little while and work together, there's a lot of players that get missed. And I know, I could tell you a handful of stories of, just one specific one. One of the best teams I've ever coached in my program. Three guys from this team actually got drafted last year out of college, but we won a pool play in a PG national tournament, and we go into the next round, and this guy just shuts us down, like completely shuts us down. And he was like 83 to 85 with a good breaking ball and a great changeup and a ton of compete. And I fell in love with this kid. He pitched against us. So afterwards I went over and talked to him, and I said, listen, what's your story? Where are you going? Where are you committed? And he said, I'm not talking to any schools. I said, You're not talking to any schools? And he goes, no. And he had this backstory that was crazy. He literally had just picked up the baseball again for the first time in a few years. His parents had passed away in a car accident a couple of years before, and he just lost baseball and was out of the recruiting. And, the coach came over to me and said, we haven't been able to get him on radars. I'm in the parking lot calling every coach that I know, and the kid ends up committing to a mid-major D1 school, goes through their camp, and he's having a great career there. And, I don't want to use names and so on and so forth, but that's the stuff that we can do. That's the connection we can make as people and program directors, and using our networking and saying, okay, it's not about just the guys that we have, because we're going to work hard for them and we're going to do everything we can for them. But there are opportunities in this process that we can help other people. And I think that if everyone just kind of has that mindset, and I think I think it would be a great world. Travel ball world would be for everybody.
A rising tide raises all ships is
no doubt.
is a saying I think about a lot. You didn't have to do that, but what you did was, you helped the kid. Like, you helped the kid and a family, and that's big time. But you helped yourself too. Like, if you think about it, those coaches you called appreciate that. And,
right.
And that's going to in turn, like that sort of integrity that you showed by helping this kid has no connection to you. Now, these coaches know, hey, when he calls, we're going to answer because he's got a guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's and you know that's going to help your kid next year. It's going to help the kid the year after that and the year after that. So yeah, well done.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, before we wrap up, do you have any other sort of words of wisdom for whether it's travel ball coaches who are getting into this thing, or facility owners, or moms and dads, or player? Any parting shots?
Man, you know what? It's a hard racket to be in, especially if you're just starting. And there's a lot of established programs out there nationally, and there's a lot of compete. There really is, and there's a lot of pride in this thing. So my advice to individuals that want to start a program, or a program director that's starting to grow, and stay true to your roots. Be honest with everybody. I know every player in the country is every amateur player in the country is a Division I player and going to be a big leaguer, but that's really not the reality of it. So you be honest with everybody. Make sure that the focus is finding the fit for every individual kid and family. And if you do that, then you'll be successful. You will.
Steve, thank you so much. This was a blast. Really good getting to know you, and man, I appreciate you coming on today. You dropped some really good wisdom. So let's stop the
time. Thank
you. Yeah, no,
me.
we're gonna have to have you back here pretty soon. Let's end the recording, but I don't want you to hang up quite yet.
All right, no problem. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.